After deciding to marry my boyfriend, Ethan, and visiting his family's home to greet them on the day, I found myself being rejected by all his relatives who said, "Don't ever contact us again. We don't want to hear your voice." Perhaps because of their upbringing, being doted on for their good looks, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were harsh and jealous towards anyone who possessed something they did not. Unfortunately, I became the target of their envy. Both my father-in-law and brother-in-law, without any resistance, joined them in rejecting me. Several months ago, I was able to exact a grand revenge on these four. My name is Amy. I am 27 years old. Now I'm living peaceful and happy days surrounded by love with my husband, adorable child, and my parents. The origin of all this started 3 years ago when I was 24. It was triggered when my boyfriend at the time, Ethan, proposed to me. Ethan and I were colleagues at work, and we became close due to our shared hobby of movie watching, and we started dating after many movie outings together on our off days. Ethan had a calm temperament and was friendly to everyone at work, making him well liked by many. He disliked disputes and was the kind of kind-hearted person who could forgive others' mistakes. Since the time I entered the company, I was interested in Ethan, so when he asked me out, I was overjoyed, and I looked forward to going to work every day. Whenever I made a mistake at work and was feeling down, he would listen to me all night long, and I naturally started thinking, I want to be with this person forever. Ethan had dreams of starting his own business in the future, and I wanted to be by his side to support him all the way. When Ethan proposed to me, I was over the moon. Of course, there was no reason to reject him. I accepted his proposal immediately and decided to marry Ethan. On the weekend after Ethan proposed to me, we immediately went to my family's home, introduced Ethan to my parents, and announced our intentions to marry. Ethan was also kind to my parents, and he even had a great time drinking and getting along with my father. My parents seemed to take a liking to Ethan, and they joyfully agreed to our marriage and shared in our happiness. Seeing Ethan engaging happily in conversation with my parents, I sincerely felt fortunate to have met him. The weekend following the report to my parents, we were scheduled to visit Ethan's house. Having decided to go greet them, I realized that I hadn't heard much about Ethan's family from him. But at the time, I didn't think much of it, considering that Ethan was living alone and probably didn't keep in touch with his parents that much. The night before the day we were to visit Ethan's family, Ethan suddenly said during our phone conversation, "About tomorrow. My parents might be a bit odd, but don't worry about it too much." I was slightly concerned about what he meant by odd, but I figured I would find out the next day, and since we had to wake up early the next day, I decided not to worry about it too much and went to sleep. Around 10 a.m. the next day, I met up with Ethan at the station and we headed towards his house together. Since Ethan was living alone, this was my first time visiting his family home. Despite what I might say, I was nervous all morning, and when I was walking with Ethan, I hardly heard what he was saying because my heart was pounding so fast. What stood there was a grand mansion, like a castle. The garden was vast, and I was petrified when I thought, Ethan grew up here? My nerves eased a little when Ethan, with his usual gentle smile, said, "Are you nervous? It's okay, let's go." As soon as the front door opened, my mother-in-law was there to greet me. "Oh my, you've come all this way? You must be tired. Come on in quickly." She greeted me kindly. She was very slender, well made up, and her hair was beautifully arranged. Her expensive, wrinkle-free clothes were flawless. Once inside, my father-in-law, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and their children were waiting. Everyone in the family other than my mother-in-law greeted me with smiles, which was a relief. I was warmly welcomed, took a seat on the sofa, had dinner while chatting with everyone, and announced our engagement. Ethan's family was very pleased, especially my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were excited, saying, "We're so happy to have such a cute girl join our family." I was moved by the warm welcome from these people. The pleasant conversation continued. Ethan's family were very talkative, and according to the stories that came up, my father-in-law ran a company that sold package tours, and my brother-in-law who lived with them was working there as an executive director, intending to take over the company in the future. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were housewives, supporting their husbands' lives, and they were living gracefully, attending dance classes and flower arrangement lessons during the day. My sister-in-law also took care of her appearance, and she exuded a confident atmosphere. My father-in-law was very kind, always smiling at me and making me feel at ease by bringing up various topics so that I wouldn't be nervous. I was sincerely glad he seemed like a good person. At that moment, a certain conversation with my father-in-law broke the harmonious atmosphere. "Amy, I heard that you work at the same company as Ethan. Are you a contract employee there?" No, I originally joined the company as a regular employee after graduating from university, just like Ethan. The company where Ethan and I work is a major corporation, known to the public as a top-tier company. It's a popular company among job seekers, and getting hired as a regular employee is challenging. But luckily, I was hired as a new graduate after college. Oh, is that so? Huh. In that case, where did you graduate from? I graduated from Harvard. That's amazing. You must be really talented. I'm so proud that someone as talented as you is marrying into our family. Amy's awesome, isn't she? She is very hardworking. She's competent at work and quick-witted. I'm so happy to be marrying her. My father-in-law and Ethan praised me so much it was embarrassing. In fact, I went to a top-tier university in the US, and I studied hard during my high school years, even at the expense of my sleep. My parents, who didn't have much money, worked hard to get me through college. I was determined to attend a good college, land a decent job, and someday definitely give back to my parents. I'd been striving towards that with all my heart. Caught up in a lively conversation with the two others, I noticed that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had gone quiet. I thought, oh no, and I desperately sought a change in the conversation. And noticing a beautiful arrangement of fresh flowers on the table before me, I asked, "Mother-in-law, that flower arrangement is lovely. Did you put it together?" To which she responded somewhat gruffly, "What? As if you, a professional working in a top-tier company, have any interest in housewives' time-killing activities." Confused, I wondered why her demeanor had changed when just a moment ago she was speaking with a smile. As if in agreement with my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law chimed in saying, "From your point of view, Amy, with your high education, you probably think all us uneducated housewives can talk about is flowers." I hadn't meant it that way at all. Not knowing what to say, I felt a lump in my throat, nearly bringing me to tears. Ethan quickly interjected, "Hey, both of you, stop that. Amy isn't the type to look down on people." Ethan's words were a comfort, but I couldn't bring myself to apologize or say anything, so I just kept my head down. Glancing around, I noticed my father-in-law, who had been drinking since noon, snoring and passed out on the sofa. My brother-in-law was clearly bored, yawning and scrolling through his phone, making the atmosphere in the room really tense. Then, at Ethan's suggestion, "Maybe it's about time we wrap this up," I was finally released from my uncomfortable atmosphere. On our way back to the station, Ethan apologized. "Sorry about today. My mom and sister have a high pride. They're particularly sensitive about their high school graduate." From what Ethan told me later, my mother-in-law had been working at a flower shop right after high school, where my father-in-law had spotted her and fallen in love at first sight. My mother-in-law was certainly a beautiful woman. She had many customers coming into the flower shop just to see her. Every day, my father-in-law would frequent the flower shop, and after a relentless pursuit, they started dating and eventually got married. Even now, it seems my father-in-law is always wrapped around my mother-in-law's little finger, always doing as she says. My sister-in-law was also a beautiful woman. She and my brother-in-law were high school classmates and had reconnected at reunion in their early 20s. Upon seeing how beautiful she had become, my brother-in-law fell head over heels, and after he persisted wooing, they ended up together. My brother-in-law too seems to do whatever his wife tells him to. Sure, I have a high level of education, but I couldn't understand why they felt insecure. They were both beautiful women who had kind husbands who would always protect them. I ended the day feeling unresolved and a little gloomy. A part of me started to question, is this marriage going to be all right? Leaving me with lingering discomfort. In any case, we received approval for our marriage from both families, so we started to plan our wedding. Even though the unease hadn't entirely disappeared, I felt that we would understand each other better if we talked more. "Don't worry, I'll always be on your side, Amy." I was able to stay positive. After nearly 6 months of lengthy preparation, and with the final push at hand, it was finally the day before our wedding when Ethan's cell phone rang. It was from his mother. After having a brief conversation over the phone, Ethan let out a surprised shout. "What? Why? Huh? We can't just change it. Hey, hold on." It seemed like the call had been cut off. When I asked what happened, Ethan shocked me with what he said. "My parents, they said they're not coming to the wedding tomorrow." "What? What do you mean?" I was completely unable to digest the situation and anxiously asked Ethan. According to Ethan, it seemed that the in-laws had forgotten that they had booked a trip for the next day and couldn't attend the wedding. Unbelievable. The parents of my husband are skipping the wedding on the day before the ceremony? We stood there in a daze for a while. Not understanding why this happened, we tried calling not only the mother-in-law, but also the father-in-law and brother-in-law many times to get an explanation, but only the dial tone continued to ring and no one picked up the phone. Confused by the sudden situation, we quickly went to the in-laws' house, but the lights were off and there were no cars, indicating that nobody was home. I said to Ethan, "When I went to greet your family the other day, I wondered if I upset your mother and sister." The atmosphere was quite tense at the end, to which Ethan responded, "As I've said before, both my mother and sister have high pride. Smart women tend to be a bit hard-headed. Even if they hold a grudge for such a thing, I wouldn't know." When I asked, "But why would your father also skip the wedding?" Ethan replied, "My dad and brother-in-law, they're both very submissive to their wives. They probably sided with them to not upset my mother and sister." Ethan said this with a distressed look. I was at a loss for words. In the end, we were unable to contact Ethan's family even on the day of the wedding, so we had no choice but to go ahead with the wedding without Ethan's family present. Why did this happen? Did I do something wrong? And was it really true that they forgot they were going on a hot springs trip? Even if it were true, I couldn't comprehend why Ethan's family would choose a trip over attending their own son's wedding. My parents, who had arrived at the wedding venue, were very surprised when they heard that Ethan's family would not be attending. Ethan said to my parents, "I'm very sorry for the trouble my parents have caused." My parents responded, "It's not your fault, Ethan. Don't worry about it. Enjoy the wedding." But their expressions were a bit complicated. I felt terrible for making my parents have such expressions at the wedding. During the reception, we could hear whispers among Ethan's friends and mine asking, "Why aren't Ethan's parents here?" And the boss from work, who kindly agreed to give a toast, also asked, "What happened to your parents?" leaving us wondering how to answer. He couldn't possibly say, "My parents are at a trip instead of attending their son's wedding." When we were asked about Ethan's parents that day, we brushed it off saying they were feeling unwell. What was supposed to be a joyous day turned out to be one mentally exhausting day. Several days after the wedding ceremony, Ethan and I went to his parents' house to report that the ceremony had ended. "Oh, Amy, it's been a while. How was the wedding? Did you have fun?" "Oh, I'm sorry. I couldn't make it because of my trip that day. I meant to buy you a souvenir, but I got so busy and forgot." She said this with no signs of remorse. "No, it's okay. I'm glad you enjoyed your trip." Inside, I felt sadness, wondering why I had to suffer such treatment, but to avoid worsening our relationship with Ethan's family, I responded with a forced smile. Ethan said, "It's unacceptable to cancel the day before. A wedding where all the relatives are absent? Is that even normal? If you didn't want to attend, we shouldn't have invited you in the first place." Then the sister-in-law said, "I would have attended if Amy wasn't the bride." What? What does that mean? I was so confused that my head started spinning. Then, as if to counterattack, the mother-in-law said, "Don't just blame us. I wanted to see my cute son's once-in-a-lifetime moment, but Amy ruined it. I'm a victim too. I'd like an apology." Ethan spoke up on behalf of me, who was too shocked to respond. "What do you mean Amy caused it? Amy didn't do anything." Then the father-in-law, who had been silent, finally spoke. "Enough is enough. How dare you come in here in the middle of our day off and complain? Is that all you came here for? Get out." He yelled at us with incredible ferocity, and we were forcibly kicked out. And as I was putting on my shoes at the entrance, I felt a prick on the bottom of my foot. Ouch! In a panic, I lifted my foot and saw a caterpillar crawling inside my shoe. Ew! I, with one shoe on, ran outside and let the caterpillar go. The mother-in-law and sister-in-law, who had been watching, said, "Are you okay?" while snickering maliciously. I, who wanted to get out of there as soon as possible, said, "Sorry for the trouble," and was about to leave the house quickly when I was stopped by my mother-in-law. "Amy, please don't get involved with us except for weddings and funerals." Huh? Before I could ask why, she abruptly closed the door, ending the conversation. I really don't understand what I've done. I just wanted to get along with Ethan's family. On the way home, Ethan kept apologizing to me. He said, "You don't have to force yourself to interact with my family anymore. I'm really sorry." The mother-in-law and sister-in-law said they would have attended the wedding if I hadn't been the bride. Feeling as if I was the one who had done something wrong without even knowing why, I started to feel sorry for Ethan. The very next day, I woke up to intense itching all over my body. The itch was so unbearable that I jumped out of bed and rushed to the mirror, only to find my entire body had swollen up fiery red. I was supposed to work that day, but quickly got a sick day and went to the dermatologist. Apparently, the swelling on my entire body was due to the caterpillar stings. The caterpillar from yesterday, huh? The itching was incredibly intense, and for about 2 weeks since that day, I was unable to sleep properly due to the severe itching. Come to think of it, I noticed my brother-in-law touching my shoes at the front door when I went to Ethan's house. The old me would have thought a caterpillar had just accidentally crawled in, but at that time, I felt nothing but distrust towards my in-laws. A month after that, Ethan was hospitalized due to ill health. He had been complaining of frequent stomach pains for a week before being hospitalized, so I, who was worried, forcefully made him take a day off from work and took him to the hospital, where he was told that he probably had a gastric ulcer and needed to be hospitalized for further tests. I was told not to contact them unless it was for a wedding or a funeral, so I hesitated, but I thought that it was not something to keep secret from Ethan's parents, so I plucked up the courage and called my in-laws. Hello? My mother-in-law picked up the phone. While the phone was ringing, I couldn't stop my hand from shaking, and I felt nauseous the moment I heard my mother-in-law's voice. That's how much I had come to dislike my mother-in-law. Hello, it's Amy. I'm sorry I haven't been in touch. What is it this time? Well, Ethan has been hospitalized due to ill health. They think it might be a gastric ulcer, but he's being admitted for tests just in case, so I thought I should let you know. Ah, a gastric ulcer, huh? Isn't it because you're overworking him? Please don't call me for such trivial matters. I'm busy. Trivial matter? Don't you care about Ethan? I don't want to hear your voice. I'll tell you clearly because you seem dull. I don't want to have anything to do with you from now on, so please don't contact me again. I'm worried about Ethan, that's why I'll call him directly. Then my brother-in-law suddenly came on the phone. Look, you're too persistent. Read the room a little. I don't know if Ethan's been hospitalized or what, but it's annoying to have you contact us every time. He hung up the phone unilaterally. The moment I heard the sound of the phone hanging up, I felt like something inside me had snapped. The in-laws who mercilessly threw harsh words at me, the mother-in-law who said don't contact us, even though her own son was hospitalized, and the entire family of in-laws who rejected me unilaterally, I couldn't forgive them. You don't want me to contact you again because it's a bother? I don't want to have anything to do with that strange family. I will never contact them again, no matter what happens. After that, there were no significant abnormalities in Ethan's test results, and it turned out to be a mild gastric ulcer, so he took medication for a while and his health improved significantly. Of course, I explained the whole situation to Ethan. Ethan, with a look of resolve on his face, told me, "Let's stop getting involved with my family. The only person that matters to me now is Amy. If they can't accept Amy, then even if we're connected by blood, they're not family to me." A year after that happened, Ethan finally left his job and realized his long-standing dream of starting a software sales business. He had been dreaming of starting his own business since before we got married. Of course, he leveraged his previous job experience to accomplish this. Ethan worked harder than anyone else at his job to achieve this. Although we're still at the starting point, I was happy to see even a bit of Ethan's dream becoming a reality. And our happiness continued. A year after he started his business, a healthy baby boy was born to us. My parents were overjoyed at the birth of their grandchild. Despite the nearly 2-hour journey from my house to theirs, they visited us frequently, making each day extremely blissful. Naturally, we did not report the birth of our child to Ethan's parents. Well, even if we had, they probably wouldn't have cared anyway, so it doesn't really matter. We didn't hear a thing from Ethan's parents after the phone call. Feeling relieved that we didn't have to deal with that peculiar family anymore was somewhat comforting. Then, several months later, something happened. The new coronavirus began to spread globally, and our country also declared a state of emergency and called for people to refrain from going out. Watching the news, all we saw were discussions about coronavirus. As the call for non-essential outings to be refrained grew louder, it was clear that the restaurant and tourism industries were severely affected. My heart ached for them. Suddenly, I wondered how the package tour company run by Ethan's father was doing, but it was none of my concern. No, I might have even cracked a smile imagining the state of his father's business. Despite the circumstances, Ethan's business was doing very well. While there was some instability in our income when we first started the business, recently our income has been higher than when Ethan was an employee and everything was going well. Around this time, Ethan started to receive a lot of calls from his parents' home. However, Ethan seemed to be avoiding getting involved with them, and he didn't pick up the phone even when he noticed the calls. There were also some voicemails left, but because he decided not to be involved with his family anymore, he ignored them without even listening to them. I often told Ethan, "You don't have to worry about me. It's okay to get in touch with them. From my perspective, I despise his family. But for Ethan, they're his family who raised him, and I felt guilty making him cut ties with his parents because of me. However, Ethan told me, as I've said before, Amy is the most important person to me, not my parents. If they can't accept Amy, even if they are my parents, I can't value them. I felt sorry, but also happy for Ethan's unwavering kindness. Ethan was still receiving calls from his father and mother every day, all of which he ignored. Then one day, a letter arrived from Ethan's family home. The letter simply stated, "Our business is on the verge of bankruptcy and we have some financial matters we'd like to discuss. We need to talk as soon as possible." Pretty audacious for someone who had cut ties with us. Their nerve was just as strong as ever, and they demanded urgent contact. Of course we didn't get in touch. Let him suffer. That's what he deserves. Next thing I knew, my cell phone was ringing. I didn't notice the call as I was at work, but a voicemail was kindly left for me. It seemed like Ethan had not been answering his phone, so the caller had reluctantly reached out to me instead. It's quite audacious, especially when I had told them not to contact me. Reluctantly, I decided to listen to the message that was left on my voicemail. All I got was a message saying, "Is this Amy's number? If Ethan continues to ignore me, I'll come knocking. Let him know." That's all it said. 2 days after the voicemail was left, Ethan had the day off because it was Saturday. We were enjoying a leisure family day at home. We had just finished lunch and were discussing what to do for the rest of the day when the doorbell rang. When I checked the monitor, there stood my 4 in-laws. Seeing my shocked face, Ethan came over to check the monitor as well. Ethan let out a heavy sigh and said to me, "You don't have to answer. They'll give up and leave if we don't open the door." However, I said, "It's fine. They've come all this way, so we should let them in. It's kind of pitiful." Ethan thought for a moment, then said, "Okay," and unlocked the door. Pitiful? No way would I ever feel that way about such diabolical in-laws. I purposely didn't tell Ethan about the voicemail. All of this was to lure them into our home. Of course, my shock at seeing them through the monitor was just an act. I knew they would show up sooner or later. There was a reason why I let Ethan's parents into our house. The real retaliation is yet to come. It's time for a full-scale confrontation. The entire in-law family had come to our front door. As soon as the door was opened and the 4 of them marched in without a hint of restraint, spoke in a frustrated tone, "How long does it take to just open the door?" Such a bunch of ill-mannered people, it's unbelievable. As soon as they entered the house, Ethan's mother saw our son happily playing with his toys on the floor and said, "Whose child is this?" I responded, "He's our son." "Ah, I remember now. You said not to contact you anymore, so I didn't report it. But I don't think you're interested in anyway, so whether or not I report it makes no difference." Upon hearing this, Ethan's mother stared at me with a look of contempt and muttered under her breath, "You are so cheeky." I was starting to enjoy the situation and asked Ethan's father, "So what brings you here today? If you wanted to visit, you should have let us know in advance." Ethan's father responded, "Didn't you read the letter?" "Do you mean the one that arrived 2 days ago?" I said, to which Ethan's father angrily said, "If you read it, you should have contacted us. It said we needed to hear from you urgently." Quick to respond, I said, "Oh, you wanted me to contact you? But you said you didn't want to have anything to do with us anymore, so I didn't think it was necessary." Looking at the stern faces of the 4, it was hard for me to suppress my laughter. Ethan, my husband, remained silent as if letting me say everything I wanted. True to form, he knew how to read the room. It's hard to believe he was born to parents who lacked such common sense. Then my father-in-law abruptly changed his attitude and began pleading. "I beg you, I apologize for the past. Due to this COVID situation, everyone's been canceling their travel reservations one after another. We're not getting any new bookings either, and who knows how long this situation will continue. If things go on this long, my business will be ruined, so can't you help me out with some money?" I responded, "I see, that's tough, but no. I'm afraid I have to decline. I don't want to conveniently assist someone who said they wanted nothing to do with me anymore. However, if you're really desperate, if you show me sincerity, I might reconsider." My father-in-law shouted, "What the hell?" and started to intimidate me with a furious face. But I wasn't scared anymore. I decided to handle things my way. "I didn't say you had to. Feel free to leave if you want to." My father-in-law looked vexed, slowly started begging. "I'm sorry, please help me out," he pleaded. Seeing that, I didn't respond. He told the other 3 to also apologize to me, and finally, all 4 of them started begging. When I responded, "No thank you," with a smile, my father-in-law suddenly got angry and banged his hand on the table. He then shouted, "You! When I'm humbling myself, you're getting high and mighty," and grabbed my collar. Surprised by his sudden aggression, I was about to tell him to stop when Ethan said, "Hey, Dad, don't lay a hand on Amy." My father-in-law asked, "You're going to take your wife's side when your parents are begging like this?" Ethan replied, "The most important person to me right now is Amy. I can't care about someone who treats Amy poorly, even if they're my parents. And I don't need any superficial apologies just for money. If you can't apologize to Amy from the bottom of your heart, just leave." At this, my father-in-law, seemingly enraged, punched Ethan square in the face. "Is that how you talk to your parents?" Blood was coming out of Ethan's mouth from the punch. I tried to say something to my father-in-law, but he was still so angry. He started to kick Ethan, who was on the ground. I yelled, "What are you doing to Ethan?" and tried to hold my father-in-law from behind, but he shrugged me off and I was thrown back, hitting my head on the corner of the table. I touched the back of my head where I hit it. My hand came back covered in blood. The other 3 people, excluding my father-in-law, looked shocked and frozen in place. As my father-in-law started ransacking the room shouting, "Where's the money?" I quickly opened the balcony window and yelled to the people passing by, "Help! I'm being murdered!" 5 minutes later, the police arrived. When the police arrived, my father-in-law quickly calmed down and began to blather, "Sorry for the commotion. I just got carried away with the excitement of seeing my grandson. My daughter-in-law seems drunk or something. She's been shouting strange things," he started with a flippant smile. I explained to the officer, "Please take this man away. He hit both my husband and me. He's also been ransacking our house, demanding cash." Suddenly, father-in-law shouted, "I didn't do anything!" And with a curse, he punched a hole in the wall. He was arrested on the spot. The other 3 of them were also taken to the station for questioning. Afterwards, it seems that father-in-law was held in jail for a while. Ethan, my husband, had been punched in the cheek, but fortunately it was just a light cut and bruise that healed quickly. On the other hand, the wound on the back of my head turned out to be bigger than I thought, and I ended up getting 10 stitches. I feel guilty for causing Ethan to get hurt as a result of luring my in-laws to our house for my revenge, but I'm glad that they have stopped asking for money, seemingly regretting their actions. From what I heard later, as I expected when they first met me, father-in-law praised me and both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law became jealous. The 2 of them apparently instructed father-in-law and my brother-in-law to act coldly towards me. Of course, neither father-in-law nor my brother-in-law could stand up to them and were merely doing as told. The caterpillar that ended up in my shoe was likely the work of my brother-in-law, egged on by my sister-in-law. Jealousy is indeed frightening. It's unbelievable how much it can change someone's life. You never know what might happen. Afterwards, as expected, my in-laws had no way of getting their hands on money. Their business went bankrupt. And their house was seized. Now it seems they live in a cheap apartment. Both my father-in-law and my mother-in-law are nearing 70. It's difficult for them to find work again. My brother-in-law had been working at father-in-law's company, but taking advantage of being the boss's son, he didn't work seriously and seemed to spend all day at the casino. Approaching 50 with no useful skills, it's hard for my brother-in-law to find a job, and it seems he's now making a living with a part-time job at a convenience store. My sister-in-law had been a stay-at-home wife with no significant career, and she seemed to be job hunting at employment agencies and the like. However, due to her selfish personality, she kept complaining about this and that and couldn't hold a part-time job down for long. Now, she seems to be cooped up at home. A little after that incident, my father retired and we decided to live together with my parents. The person who proposed living together was none other than Ethan. It was because I am an only child and he was concerned about my parents' life in their old age. I've returned to work now, and my parents take care of our son during the day, so I feel secure balancing childcare and work. Ethan, my beloved husband, and my kind parents. And of course, my son, who is my treasure. Life with them is the happiest. I resolve never to forget to be grateful for this happiness.
The obstetrician told us to get checked out in more detail and gave us a referral. We might become parents. Daniel would be happy, I thought. That's what I was thinking. But Daniel's words were different from what I had imagined. Huh? Seriously? Daniel looked perplexed and sighed as if it were a bother. What's wrong? We've been wanting a child for so long. Aren't you happy? Pregnant? I don't know anything about that. Please just stop talking. Do you plan on having a kid and spending even more money when you're living off me? Who do you think is providing for our living? It's thanks to me working overtime and on weekends, right? I was dumbfounded by his patronizing tone. I had been so happy about the long-awaited pregnancy. but it quickly felt like I had been dropped into hell. I don't want to come home to a messy house and the sound of a crying child. There's no point in being married to you if you're pregnant. Get out of the house. Hearing those words, I felt foolish for having endured so much until now. I remained silent and went to my room to start packing my things. I am Scarlett, a working mother who works from home. I live with my husband Daniel, who is 2 years older than me. Even while balancing work, I have managed to take care of the household to relieve my husband's fatigue. We've been married for 5 years. When you're together for a long time, you start to see the less appealing sides of each other. I was no exception. Daniel often leaves the house citing work as the reason. He frequently works overtime and has to work on weekends almost every week. I was worried about Daniel's health. Hey, you've been working overtime a lot lately, haven't you? Are you okay? Yeah, but it can't be helped. It's tough for everyone, not just me. I can't just not do overtime and go home, right? That might be true, but I'm worried you might overwork yourself. Can't you at least take weekends off? Nah, that's impossible. If I don't work on weekends, it just means more work on weekdays. It's better to get things done when other companies are off, right? I understand what you're saying, but can't you take even one day off? I want to spend more time with you. Daniel gave a resigned look and glanced at me as he had said this. You're always at home, so maybe you don't understand about work. There are times when a man has to stand firm, and that time is now. Haven't you ever heard of workplace reform? I was appalled by his statement, which was so out of touch with the times. Besides, don't get jealous at your age. It's one thing if it's a young girl, but there's nothing pleasing about a 36-year-old woman getting jealous. I was speechless at Daniel's harsh words. Is this how you talk to a wife who's worried about you? I had to speak up. That's no way to talk. What's wrong with being worried about a husband who works too much? Ah, enough already. I don't want to come home tired and listen to my wife nag. Besides, don't complain when you're living off me. Daniel left the living room, clearly irritated. I was just thinking about Daniel, so why did I have to be spoken to like this? I was becoming unsure of how to deal with Daniel. On a day off? Even though Daniel had the whole day off, it wasn't to spend time with me. It was to go to Daniel's parents' house. Daniel's parents lived about a 30-minute drive away. Daniel had a good relationship with his in-laws, especially his mother Ella, who was very sweet on Daniel. Daniel would do anything Ella asked. I didn't get along well with Ella. Daniel's father, Logan, was a sensible man who would sometimes rein in Ella when she went too far. He was kind to me, his daughter-in-law. However, Logan was a busy company president and often away from home. Daniel worked for the company Logan ran. Oh, Daniel, welcome back. Come on in. I'm home, Mom. Ella only addressed Daniel and ignored me as if it were the most natural thing. Daniel didn't seem to question the situation at all. Long time no see, Ella. When I initiated the conversation, Ella seemed to notice me for the first time and said, Oh, did Scarlett come too? As she said that, Ella walked into the house with Daniel, leaving me behind. Then Logan appeared at the entrance, apologizing to me as he came. I'm sorry, Scarlett. It's good to see you. Come in. It's been a while, Logan. Thanks for having me. Watching Daniel and Ella chatting on the sofa in the living room, Logan scolded them. Why did you two go ahead and leave Scarlett behind? It's only proper to show her in together. Well, I did call out. She could have just come in on her own. It's not right to just walk into your husband's family home on your own. We invited her, so we should be considerate. You should understand, being a wife yourself. Dad, don't be so hard on Mom. She was just happy to see me back. Maybe she just got a little carried away. I can't understand being so overjoyed just because an adult son comes home once in a while. Logan shook his head and apologized to me again. However, Daniel and Ella looked as if they didn't understand what they did wrong, and ultimately, they didn't apologize to me. As I was about to sit on the sofa, Ella called out to me, with a smile that was unsettlingly pleasant. Scarlett, could you help me make some coffee? Sure. I followed Ella to the kitchen. As soon as we were alone, the smile disappeared from Ella's face, and she spoke to me in a low voice. Come on, hurry up and make the coffee, and make sure you prepare the cookies properly. Whenever I visited my in-laws, Ella would push household chores onto me, especially when Logan wasn't looking. She knew she'd be scolded by Logan if he found out she was making me do all the work. Such a cunning person. But this was nothing new to me. I was used to it by now. While I prepared the coffee, Ella continued to criticize me nonstop. My clumsiness, the cookies not being to her taste, my unfortunate-looking face. She would list these complaints and finally conclude with, "Really? I wonder why Daniel married someone like you." It's astonishing how she can tirelessly complain about me every time. At first, I was shocked by every comment, but after 5 years of the same, I seem to have become numb to it. For minor things, I just apologize with a simple, "I'm sorry," and let it go in one ear and out the other. Perhaps my lack of reaction was boring for Ella, as she continued her tirade against me. "It's been 5 years since you got married and you still don't have children. Could it be that you're infertile?" My body tensed up instantly. This was something I had always been sensitive about. I had wanted children since the beginning of my marriage. Her blunt mention of such a delicate topic made me struggle to contain my anger. Noticing my reaction, Ella seemed to decide to press the issue further. "Daniel is our only son. Isn't it the wife's duty to produce an heir? Don't you even understand that?" "Well, I do want children, but children are a blessing and I don't want to hear excuses. If you can't fulfill your duty as a wife, you're not fit to be Daniel's wife. You might as well get a divorce." Just as I was about to retort to her insensitive remarks, Logan entered the kitchen. "It seems to be taking a while. What's going on?" "Oh, Father, it's nothing. I'm just about to bring the coffee." Pretending as if she had prepared it herself, Ella snatched the tray from me and took the coffee and cookies to the living room. "Scarlett, are you okay? Did Ella say something to you again?" "No, I'm fine." It seemed Logan hadn't heard our conversation. The thought of bringing it up again was too painful for me. I answered Logan with a forced smile, suppressing my anger. As if nothing had happened, Ella was chatting amiably with Daniel. The coffee I drank while looking at Ella's face tasted like nothing. I wanted to leave as soon as possible. That thought kept running through my mind. Months had passed since that visit to my in-laws. Daniel was still bogged down with overtime and working weekends. Lately, I had been feeling unwell, hardly able to get out of bed. I managed to keep up with the essential household chores, but it seemed Daniel hadn't noticed any difference from before. His obliviousness was a relief at this moment. After several days of feeling unwell, I decided it was time to visit the doctor. At the local clinic, I received unexpected news from the doctor. That evening, as I warmed up dinner for Daniel, who returned home late, I decided to speak up. "Hey, there's something I need to talk to you about." "What is it? Does it have to be today? I'm tired from work." Despite claiming to be working even on days off, he's never at home. I almost said that, but held back at the last moment. I didn't respond to Daniel's question. I continued speaking without addressing it. "I've been feeling unwell for a few days, so I went to the local clinic today. They said I might be pregnant." "What?" Daniel's eyes widened as he looked at me. This way, I won't have to endure any nagging from Ella. Thinking this, I felt a bit relieved. "They told me to get a thorough checkup at the obstetricians and gave me a referral. We might become parents." I thought Daniel would be happy. That's what I was thinking. But his response was not what I had imagined. "Huh? Seriously?" Daniel frowned and sighed as if it were a bother. "What's wrong? We've been wanting a child for so long. Aren't you happy?" "Pregnant? I don't know anything about that. Please just stop talking." "Why would you say that? You know I've wanted children since we got married, right?" Daniel sighed deeply again. I was the one who wanted to sigh. "You're living off me, and now you want to have a child and spend even more money? Who do you think is providing for us? It's because I'm working overtime and on weekends, right?" I was stunned by his patronizing tone. I had been so happy about the long-awaited pregnancy, but his words quickly dashed that happiness. "I don't want to come home to a messy house and the sound of a crying child. There's no point in being married to you if you're pregnant. Get out of the house." Hearing those words made all the patience I had maintained until then feel foolish. I remained silent and went to my room to start packing my things. After that, I moved quickly. I found a place to move into, arranged for movers, and sent all my belongings to the new home. Within a week, I had completed the move, left the divorce papers I had filled out, and left the house. The next day, I received a message from Daniel saying he had filed the divorce papers. All the time I had spent enduring felt wasted. The 5 years of marriage ended just like that. About 6 months after the divorce, Daniel called me. I was at work and didn't notice until later, but there were over 20 missed calls from him just in the morning. There had been a few calls from him every few weeks before, but I had no desire to talk to someone I had divorced and had ignored them. However, this many missed calls was unprecedented. It might have been an emergency, I thought, and decided to call Daniel back. He answered after just one ring. "You finally picked up. You're late." The first thing I heard when he answered was Daniel shouting. I regretted calling back immediately. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "What do you mean? I don't understand what you're talking about." "Don't lie. It's about the rent. I got a call saying it's been half a year of unpaid rent. And the utilities, too. What's going on?" His absurd accusation almost made me laugh. This wasn't something you discuss with an ex-spouse. If you're getting notices, just pay them. Why are you calling me about this? "It was supposed to be deducted from my account all this time, right? Why did you change the account as soon as you left? Such harassment. You really have a terrible personality." "Of course. I made it so it couldn't be deducted from that account anymore. Why should I pay for rent and utilities for a house I don't even live in anymore?" There was silence on the other end of the phone. Daniel was probably filled with question marks in his head by my unexpected response. "Huh? Did you just say you were the one paying for our living expenses?" Daniel finally started talking in a condescending tone. "Don't joke around. I was the one providing for you. There's no way you could afford that." "What are you talking about? Thinking you were providing for me is a huge misunderstanding. Your salary alone couldn't possibly support the both of us living as adults." "Huh? What are you saying? I'm the son of the president. My income is obviously high." High income just because he's the president's son? What kind of logic is that? It was time to confront him with reality. "Have you ever looked at your own payslip? Why don't you check it right now? Then we'll talk." Daniel seemed to be getting irritated with my rebuttals. He said he'd check and seemed to go look for his payslip. "It just so happens it's payday this week. Wait, I'll check right now." His voice suddenly cut off, so I checked my phone signal. It was fine. It seemed Daniel had suddenly gone silent. "Huh? What's this amount? What's going on?" "For some reason, your salary is significantly lower compared to others your age." Daniel seemed unable to accept reality, murmuring "no way" and "can't be" on the other end. Uncertain if he was listening, I continued. "Yet you lived in an upscale apartment and splurged on brand items, thinking you're the president's son. With such spending, it's no wonder you couldn't afford living expenses or rent." "No, I have to wear things befitting the son of a president." "What's the point of buying things that don't match your salary? This is what happens when you don't face reality." "Hey, life must be tough for you since our divorce, right? Let's remarry and you can come back to live with me." Daniel said something outrageously rude while laughing foolishly. After all the belittling, which mouth was he speaking from? I firmly and clearly retorted, "There's no way I'd remarry someone as unreasonable as you. My work is going well, so don't worry. I'm enjoying my life a lot more without you. Please don't bother me." "Your work? Acting all high and mighty. It must be just some part-time job, right? Living on your own must be just scraping by. You'd be better off with me." "It's not a part-time job. I've been working from home even before we divorced. I'm sure I told you. You don't remember anything I say, do you?" "Work from home? I've never heard about that. Besides, you probably only make pocket money anyway." "Anyway, let's remarry." I cut off Daniel's words, seemingly desperate for reconciliation, with a statement that would further plunge him into despair. "I've started my own business." "Business?" "Yes, that's right. The company is doing well and we're seeing good results, so I have absolutely no need to remarry you." The fact that his ex-wife, whom he thought he was supporting, was actually a successful entrepreneur and a president of her own company must have been a blow to Daniel's pride, especially given his complacency about being the son of a president. I felt a sense of vindication after being belittled for so long. However, the next words from Daniel were unexpected. "A president, huh? You said your business is doing well, so you must have plenty of money. Then you can pay for my living expenses, right?" I was astounded by the lack of pride in Daniel's words, coming from someone who was supposed to be so full of it. It's surprising how people can act so desperately when they're out of options. "We're divorced, remember? We have nothing to do with each other. I'm not going to pay money for someone who's a stranger to me now." "Wait, Scarlett." "There's nothing more to talk about. Don't call me again over such nonsense. Goodbye." Daniel seemed to be saying something on the other end, but I mercilessly hung up the phone. There were a few more attempts from him to call, but of course I didn't respond. Eventually, he seemed to give up, and the calls stopped. Looking at the quiet mobile phone, I felt relieved. I wonder how much time has passed since I spoke with Daniel on the phone. My days have been so hectic that I can't even remember such details. My phone rang again, and without checking the screen, I answered it, resolving to always check the caller in the future, no matter how busy I was. It was Daniel on the line, sounding upset as usual. "There's a rumor going around the office that I'm cheating. You must have done something for revenge." "Look, I'm too busy to bother with someone I want nothing to do with. It wasn't me." "That's impossible. Only you would benefit from such a thing, spreading false rumors. I'll demand compensation from you." It all came down to him wanting to squeeze some money out of me. Giving money to such a person would be like throwing it away. I would never comply with such a demand. I decided to respond in a purposefully frivolous manner. "Ah, could it be because of that?" "You have an idea about it? It was you after all." "Of course I haven't been spreading any rumors, but I did consult Logan, your company's president, about your affairs." "What? You told Dad?" Daniel asked me in a flustered manner. Perhaps he thought I hadn't caught on. Or was it the shock that my father knew about the situation? Either way, it didn't matter to me. Before I brought up the pregnancy issue to Daniel, I had been suspicious of his frequent overtime and weekend work. Logan was often busy with work, and it was common for him not to be at his home when I visited. However, I couldn't imagine Logan, a reasonable man, forcing his son or any employee to work excessive overtime or weekends. So I hired a detective to investigate Daniel's activities. As expected, Daniel was having an affair with a female colleague. The other person was a female colleague from the same company. It was one thing if it was just Daniel, but with the affair involving another employee, I had no choice but to inform Logan, the president. I sent various pieces of evidence to the company addressed to the president. It's likely that Logan took some action, which led to the rumors spreading within the company. I can't believe Dad knows. What have you done?" "Don't get mad at me. If you hadn't had an affair in the first place, none of this would have happened. I owed a lot to Logan. I couldn't overlook an employee blatantly having an affair." "You're meddling in things you shouldn't. Damn, my position is—" Why he clung to a position that didn't even pay enough to support one wife was beyond me. It was a waste of time to keep listening to Daniel muttering to himself. I hung up the phone. A few days later, I received a call from Logan. "Scarlett, it's been a while. Do you have a moment?" "Long time no see. Yes, I'm available." "I see. Well, I'm terribly sorry for the trouble my foolish son has caused." "No, Logan, you're not to blame. Daniel is the one at fault." "That may be so, but I also believe there was a lack of oversight on my part. I'm truly sorry for making you uncomfortable." It was exasperating that Daniel had caused Logan, a man of integrity, to apologize like this. Neither in the previous phone call nor in this one did Daniel himself apologize. It's truly unfortunate for a parent to have to apologize for their grown child's actions. "Given the affair within the company, we had to impose severe sanctions. The woman involved was demoted and transferred to another department, and Daniel has been dismissed." "Dismissed? Excuse me, but is dismissal a common consequence for an internal affair?" It's not just about this incident." "Scarlett, were you aware of Daniel's salary?" "Yes, but he mostly spent it as he pleased, hardly contributing to the household." "Unbelievable. That boy never ceases to amaze me. Well, there's a reason for the amount of his salary." Logan sighed before gently asking if I was willing to listen. Of course, I agreed. "The thing is, he strutted around using the fact that he was the president's son, but hardly did any work. He even threatened those who opposed him with complaints to me, the president." I suspected there was a reason behind that salary amount, but I never imagined it would be this bad. I hadn't realized he was such a self-centered person. It was a relief to have divorced such a self-centered person. "It would be wrong to pay him a high salary just because he's my son, given his behavior. That's why his salary was what it was." "It's admirable of you, Logan, but it's exactly what using someone else's power for personal gain means." Logan laughed heartedly at that. "Exactly. I don't regret my decision as a president. However, it seems to have shocked Daniel. He's come back home but has been shut away in his room ever since. You don't need to worry about it, Scarlett." With that, Logan ended the call. While I felt sorry for Daniel, I also felt guilty for causing trouble for Logan. Not even a month after my conversation with Logan, I received a message from Ella. It was a demand to come to my in-laws' house. The message was terse. To me, my in-laws' house felt like enemy territory. I wanted to avoid it if at all possible. However, there were things I wanted to discuss directly with Ella. After contacting Logan, he assured me he would be home, so I decided to visit my in-laws. Oh, you came. Ella opened the entrance door with a blank expression, not bothering to welcome me in, but instead quickly retreated into the house herself. As usual, he didn't invite me in, but hurried into the room by himself. When I was his wife, such behavior puzzled me, but now there's no need for me to gauge Ella's mood. Following Ella, I entered the house. In the living room, only Ella was present, with Logan nowhere to be seen. Is it just you here? Yes, I sent my husband out for groceries. Daniel won't come out of his room because of you. Poor thing. Without offering me any coffee, Ella seated herself on the sofa, merely glancing at me. She knew that if Logan were here, he wouldn't tolerate her treating me disrespectfully. She must have sent Logan away on purpose. Always the cunning one. I sat down on a dining chair a bit away from her. Why did you call me here? Ella frowned at my direct approach, likely annoyed at being forced to follow my lead in the conversation. It's simple, Scarlett. Remarry Daniel. Stunned by these unexpected words from Ella, whom I thought despised me, I wondered what her reasoning could be for wanting her son to remarry someone she disliked. No, there is no chance of reconciliation with Mr. Daniel. Moreover, I don't believe this is a matter for you to discuss. But look at what you've done to Daniel. He's so distraught he can't even leave his room, let alone the house. You should take responsibility for that. Whether Daniel had misrepresented the facts or Ella had misconstrued them was irrelevant. The truth was entirely different. Daniel betrayed me first. He threw me out when I mentioned I might be pregnant and had an affair with a woman from his company. That's unforgivable. Ella reacted to something I said. Her expression was as if she had an aha moment. Exactly. You're pregnant, aren't you? Do you intend to let your child live a life without a father? It's better for a child to have both parents together. No, that's not necessary. When I firmly refused, Ella's face turned red, and she slammed her hand on the table. What's with you? Defiant and insolent since you got here. A wife should listen to her mother-in-law. Ella screamed in a shrill voice that hurt my ears. A man like that isn't worth my time. And for the record, I'm not pregnant. What? Ella's expression became a mix of confusion and sadness when she heard I wasn't pregnant. What do you mean? Weren't you told at the hospital that you were pregnant? That's what Daniel said. The clinic I went to wasn't an obstetrics and gynecology specialist, so they gave me a referral to get a detailed examination. It turned out to be just a health issue, not a pregnancy. I see. Ella's face fell into complete despair. She must have been planning to use the child as a reason to push for a reconciliation with Daniel. Such naive thinking. I wouldn't want to raise a child with someone who couldn't even be happy about a pregnancy. So there's no need to worry about the child's father. I won't be remarrying Daniel. What? What do you mean? Do you no longer care about Daniel? Don't you feel sorry for him? I feel nothing for him. He's a stranger to me now. Ella lunged at me. I was struck. That's when Logan intervened. What are you doing? Logan had returned from shopping and stepped between Ella and me. But Logan, she's terrible. She won't even try to help Daniel. She only cares about herself. What a cruel person. The one who acted dishonorably first was Daniel. How many times do I have to say it? You lose sight of everything when it comes to Daniel and act recklessly. That's your problem. Enough is enough. Ella burst into tears as if her emotions had exploded. Her blind maternal love had created a codependent relationship between Daniel and her. Even after Daniel became independent, moved out, and started his own family, they couldn't let go of their distorted affection for each other. I felt pity for them. Logan, Ella, I'm here today to tell you directly that I will be filing for compensation against Daniel and his affair partner in the divorce court. Ella continued to scream at me, but her voice was choked with tears, making it hard to understand her words. It was undoubtedly more abuse directed at me. Yes, that's right. Of course. Please proceed with that. I'll cover Daniel's part and promise to pay in full up front. After that, I'll ensure he repays me. I won't let his mother interfere, so you can rest assured. Logan remained my ally to the end. Ella continued to rant incoherently. When Logan thundered, "If you continue to spoil Daniel, I'll consider divorce. Change your ways." Ella finally bowed her head in silence. Despite all the commotion, Daniel never showed his face. Later, through my lawyer, I filed for compensation against Daniel and his affair partner in the divorce court. Both were paid in full. According to Logan, Daniel started working part-time and has been repaying him a fixed amount every month. "I've threatened to transfer the debt if he's ever late, so there haven't been any delays so far." Logan said this with a laugh. It seems Ella tried to work and give the money to Logan out of pity for Daniel, but Logan's threat of divorce made her behave. Both Daniel and Ella need to reconsider their actions. While Logan's ordeal is immeasurable, I hope they come to possess a sense of common decency like Logan. As for me, work is going well, and I continue to lead a busy life. Having Logan, a seasoned president, as a sounding board for business matters has been incredibly reassuring. For now, I plan to enjoy a carefree single life to the fullest.